You are tasked with introducing a visitor from a faraway galaxy to our planet and explaining our way of life to him. Part of your assignment is that you must be truthful. How, then, do you explain to this visitor the concept of prison? We live in a world that constructs buildings for the purpose of confining men and women against their will within. In the U.S. alone, there are 1,566 state prisons, 98 federal prisons, 3,116 jails, 1,323 juvenile detention centers, 181 immigration detention centers, and 80 native holding facilities, not to mention the plethora of mental hospitals, military prisons, and U.S. prisons outside of the continental United States. Nearly 2 million people are incarcerated within these facilities. Over a 40-year period, our nation's prison population increased by 400%. In 2020, 500,000 people entered prison's gates and went from being an individual with a number and a handful of freedoms to being an individual with a number and not so much as the illusion of a freedom. 125,000 of these men and women were non-violent offenders returning to prison due to a technical parole violation and had not acquired new charges. Probation and parole being a system designed for people to fail and to keep the revolving door to the yard open and turning. 350,000 are incarcerated for non-violent drug-related charges. 1 in 4 will be rearrested within the first year of release, the majority of which are dealing with poverty, mental illness, and addiction. Prison time only serving to expound upon these issues. The severe impact prison has to a person's mental health is and has been clear. The numbers do not lie. So why, in all of the time we have been caging people, has no one thought to try something different? Sure, there have been a handful of laws passed over the years implementing certain alternatives in lieu of prison. However, these are just a way of prolonging the inevitable. Probation and parole conditions are so extreme, it is nearly impossible for a person to avoid revocation. A missed monthly payment, a dirty urine screen, loss of residency, failure to report, the list goes on. The justice system is a business and works for its intended purpose, to generate revenue. There are 686,000 full-time law enforcement officers in the United States. There are 115,000 employees in the Justice Department, not to mention lawyers, bail bondsmen, judges, clerks, bailiffs, and the like. The annual cost to operate the entire nationwide prison system has grown to over $300 billion a year. This means the state is receiving about $125,000 per inmate per year. The justice system is truly a business that functions as it was intended. Once a person is in the system, getting out is very difficult. Many find themselves stuck in it for life. Can you imagine? Your life circumstances are such that you were perhaps born with a mental illness, and thus you struggle just to survive all of your life. Or perhaps you grew up in poverty, or being taken from one foster home to another, and never knowing what it was like to have a loving and supportive family. Now, you work minimum wage jobs because you do not have the opportunity to receive an education. Your life is such that depression and anxiety are prominent, and you desperately desire relief. You inevitably turn to drugs and, in turn, end up getting caught and sent to prison. The little you had managed to attain in life is taken from you, along with your family. Your wife becomes homeless without you to help her scrape by, and your children are taken and placed into foster care, and the cycle continues into the next generation. The possible scenarios are endless. However, the point should be clear. The number of inmates who are incarcerated for violent crimes are nowhere near what you might think. 47% of all incarcerated individuals are locked up for offenses considered violent. However, that they are classified as violent does not necessarily mean that they were violent crimes. Certain laws have allowed for many non-violent crimes to be enhanced and classified as violent. For example, if you were to sell your buddy a bag of dope and the quantity was over a certain amount, it becomes a violent crime. This all being said, I would still beg the question, why is our answer to every issue to lock people up in concrete boxes? Driving without a license, non-payment of child support, petty theft, petty possession of drugs, the list goes on. These are all jailable offenses. Still, even if a person commits a violent crime, why just lock them away? This is the thing that no one seems to want to talk about. Given the right set of circumstances, anyone is capable of the same crimes. Some of us were just luckier than others. If you are fortunate enough to have a bit of money in the bank, the system is something you can, for the most part, buy your way out of. If you can afford the right caliber lawyer, you need not concern yourself with facing prison time. For the indigent, this is not the case. Public defenders are notoriously bad and work with the court to try to get you to accept a plea agreement so that they get paid. The court gets their conviction, and everyone else down the line gets paid. That is, after all, what it's all about. Money. Let's talk about prison conditions. Even if you are a non-violent offender, you find yourself suddenly surrounded by frustrated individuals who are capable of anything, especially given the heightened state of stress they are all under. You are crammed into a tiny space with so many other personalities. All of these other inmates have found themselves in a state of constant stress, worrying about court, their families, and who may be looking to take advantage of them. Mixed into the lot are the mentally ill, who are capable of anything at any given moment. You are housed in a place much like a giant warehouse, your bunk much like a shelf that you have been assigned to. You are stored away and forgotten, while the world moves on without you. And this is only half the picture. Outside the walls which confine you, there are children who are now without a father, wives without husbands, mothers without sons, families' lives ripped apart and changed forever because you did something that everyone does. You made a mistake. Once you are an inmate, you no longer have rights that you once had. You are now subject to all sorts of ill treatment. If you want to reach out to your family, you are entitled to use a telephone. However, your calls are not private and are monitored by jail staff and cost an average of about $5 to $15 per call, each call lasting only 15 minutes. If you are indigent, you are simply out of luck. You will be given the opportunity to work when you reach a prison yard. Some states offer what is known as state pay, which equals out to about $20 to $30 a month on average. Some of the jobs require long hours and offer no days off. Some states offer only what is known as good time, In exchange for your labor, this is basically time taken off of your sentence, and, on average, is about 2 days per month worked. You are subject to a variety of punishments for any number of infractions. If you are in a physical altercation, regardless of who the aggressor was, you will be sent to the hole and all of your few possessions are lost. You could be put in a standing cage, handcuffed and forced to stand on your feet for hours in one spot. You could be placed in a restraining chair, which straps every part of you down to where you are completely unable to move. These chairs are on wheels, and prisoners can be wheeled into courtyards in extreme cold or heat and left for hours. Other such punishments can include cell confinement for any number of days, loss of meals, loss of privileges such as phone calls or commissary. All this added to the already overwhelming burdens of the thoughts within your mind. It is no wonder the suicide rates in prison is so high. In closing, I ask one final question for your consideration. What if this was you? Or your son or daughter? Personally, I would eagerly choose death over a life behind bars. I may not know exactly what the alternative to all of this is, but I know there is another way. There has got to be another way.
It's a very, very bad world.